Well, welcome everyone to the AES Lunchtime free webinar series. Just kicking off here with our new series in the fall. And our first course today is the Understanding the International Green Code IGCC program and how to use it now. Real quick, a couple housekeeping things. All lines will be muted just to preserve recording quality and ensure a good experience for everybody. If you do find you're having any issues with your audio, good chance is to switch from what you have either from phone or to VoIP or other way around. If you have issues with video, try logging back in. And also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, as we're going, feel free to put them right in the chat, and I will moderate and interject your questions as we're going along, or save them till the end. And if it's a larger question that we don't understand, I can certainly unmute you to have you ask, as we certainly want to make this interactive as well. This course is registered for one continuing education unit through both USGVC, GVCI, AIA, HSW, NARI, Green, and potentially is viable for your local builders or state architectural license as well. You'll have to check with your own state. So this is brought to you by the Alliance for Environmental Sustainability, which is, I'm excited to announce as of this week has a new name and a new look. We're the same organization, formerly the Alliance for Environmental Sustainability, and now we are the GreenHome Institute is our new organization, and I'm excited to announce that to you all. You're some of the first folks to hear this. Again, we were founded in 2000. We're one of the Midwest Lead for Homes providers, and we're a 501c3 nonprofit who's providing professionals and homeowners with education, resources, and programming to ensure greener and healthier home new construction and existing home remodeling across single-family and multifamily residential projects and developments. As I said, we're a Lead for Homes provider with over 25 Green Rater partners throughout the Midwest, nearly 10,000 registered units and over 5,000 certified both LEED and Green Star projects across the Midwest we're celebrating as of this fall. We want to thank our 3-year Platinum Plus sponsor, Anderson Windows, for being a huge supporter to the GreenHome Institute and our new GreenHome remodeling certification program. And we're excited to have with us at our next week's webinar series, Matt Grokoff, who has done a rehab job on America's oldest home and brought it to net positive energy. And also, that's while driving his own Volt. Pretty exciting, and he's going to take us through a little how to rehab your existing home to reach net positive energy. You can join us next Wednesday for that. And then the following Wednesday, September 24th, I will be leading our Understanding Green Home Certifications and Labels 101. We'll be going through all the different energy and green home certification labels and comparing and contrasting them through one session and then another session during the following week. Tonight we're launching our 8-week webinar series on understanding Lead for Homes. If you're someone who's used the Lead for Homes rating system and you're interested in learning more, we'll be kicking this off tonight at 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you miss it but want to catch it next week, it's every Wednesday, and this will be recorded and you'll be able to access it. Get involved. You can join us, become a member, a sponsor. We're looking for volunteer interns, people, professionals to put on recorded webinars such as this one, or submit professional articles and blogs on advanced green home building topics. So getting started here, residential energy codes are improving faster and faster across both the Midwest and the country. Just in Illinois now, they've advanced to the International Energy Code IECC 2012, so they're definitely one of the leaders both in the Midwest and in the U.S. One thing that we're seeing as these codes progress, both across both state residential codes and state commercial codes, is that even even the states that have no formal state-based code for both residential and commercial, 52% on average of the local municipalities within those states are utilizing some sort of IECC code, and that's even growing as well. So on that note, going beyond just the energy code, I'm excited to introduce Ramesh Galati, who's going to be taking us through the understanding the International Green Construction Code and how to use it now. Ramesh is an Illinois-based architect with practice and advocacy focus on universal accessibility and environmental sustainability. He's a committee member and current vice chair of the Sustainability Committee of the International Code Council. And he is also one of our board members for nearly 2 years. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Ramesh, and if you guys have any questions, put them in the comment box, and we'll certainly try to get them answered as we go.
Thanks, Brett. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. Is there some way of finding out that everyone can hear me? Brett?
Ramesh, I can hear you just fine, and I haven't. If anybody can't hear the speaker, please just let us know in the comment box, and we'll try to fix it.
All right. Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. International Green Code, IGCC. Just to give you a brief summary on IGCC, which is actually the way of how things, once the codes are adopted, and it has begun in the United States, the direction that we headed. The cooperating sponsors, the idea originally was started by ICC, American Institute of Architects, and ASTM. They were the original entities that were involved in discussing and trying to see if there's something can be done about creating a code that addresses the present climate change and carbon footprint and what have you. And this dialogue started sometime in 2009. Along the way, then ASHRAE and USGBC and Illuminating Engineering Society came along, and they became the cooperating sponsors. This cooperation resulted in the first ever International Green Construction Code, which was released in 2012. We are right now in the second, iteration of this building code. Would be released in 2015, sometime in the spring. So here is just to throw a little bit of a lightness to this code discussion. Is the American Institute of Architects, this is what the American Institute of Architects considers the biggest issue, our carbon footprint. And everyone agreed with that, and it's really, that's what the IGCC is all about. So to give you a bit of a background to this, why do we need a building code? So I just want to go through this slide here and illustrate what's going on. If we were to take the entire, and I'm going to just read, maybe summarily read the text here. If we could fit the entire population of the world into a global village consisting of 100 people and maintaining the portions of the races, this is how the various races, the percentages look out. We would have 57 Asians, 21 Europeans, 14 Americans, and 8 Africans. You go to, let me just move this slide around if I can. If we go, and I guess you guys can see the slide here, which is really shows you a share of global cumulative energy related carbon dioxide emissions between 1890 and 2007. While the Americans, there are 14 Americans in that global village, the Americans consume 28% of the American emit 28% of the global emissions, almost twice. European Union is 23% as opposed to 21, so it's more or less about the same. If you add the two major uh, populated countries, China and India, which is really uh, 57 Asians, cumulatively, they emit, between the two of them, about 13% of the carbon dioxide. And so on. So you can see that Russia has 11%, the rest of the world is 18. If we come back to this slide here, which is really a population statistics, and it shows you that in as much as China, for example, they constitute about 1/5 the population of this entire world, yet they emit about 9% of the carbon dioxide. Um, and same thing goes for India. They are about 17%, and India actually prorated. They emit 3% of the carbon dioxide. Um, Interestingly, you can see United States comprises 4.6% of the total population of the world, and yet we consume almost, we emit almost 7% or 6 times our population. We emit carbon dioxide. Going further down into the U.S. energy, I think of the 28% that we emit carbon dioxide, 48% of the emissions are caused by buildings and related industries, production, manufacturing, and what have you. Manufacturing industry accounts for 24%. I think there's a third component which is actually cut off in the slide, and that is transportation. And that's probably about, maybe, if you add these up, it's probably about 28%. So you can see the building industry actually consumes the most amount of energy. And that's where actually the solutions lie, because we know that the transportation industry is working on more efficient fuel consumption, lesser dependence on fossil fuels, and hybrid systems and what have you. So that's why this dialogue actually sort of shifts to what is it that we can do in designing buildings and and in the building industry that we can actually be more energy, we can consume less energy. Moving to the next slide, why do we need a building code? So here are some of the facts, and this actually pertains to the United States. We waste more than 66% of the electricity we create, more than 71% of the energy created by transportation. We waste more than 20% of the energy created for the industry. Likewise, we waste more than 20% of the energy created for residential use. We waste more than 20% energy created for commercial use. If we take these and actually summarize this thing, what we're really talking about is that we, in effect, waste more than 50% of all the energy we create. And that's where I think the answers lie. If we start working on coming up with some solutions that our waste of energy is not so high, so to bring that level down. And that's why we need, if buildings are a major cause of, energy consumption and waste, then that's why it sort of, it's reasonable to say that we should have a green construction code that emphasizes efficiencies in energy and water and natural resources and what have you. There are other programs around. LEED, I think we all know about that. It has been a runaway success. It has raised the profile of these issues and how to address them. Green Globes another one, SB Tool, Green Point, Energy Star, GBI, NEH Green. These are really not building codes. They are certification programs, more or less. So uh, they award points, and I think the industry and the organizations have started have started understanding what these programs do and how these programs could be integrated into their building design and building construction systems to be more efficient. IGCC, on the other hand, actually is a building code, and in as much as it takes its cue from LEED and Green Globes and the others, it is actually a building code. It's a model building code uh, that actually is designed to facilitate design, build, and enforce development of carbon neutral building footprint. It is a standalone building code, and it kind of ties in with the ICC's families of about 15 other codes. You can't have a green code just addresses issues that are sustainability related without having connection to the building code, the fire code, and the plumbing code, and energy codes, and what have you. So in that sense, it is IGCC is unique. It finds references in the 15 other building codes that are developed by ICC. Today, as part of the learning objectives, here are some of the major points that I have put together that we would be more aware of once we've gone through the entire presentation, understanding how the green building concepts in land use and materials, resources, conservation, efficiency of energy and water, including indoor air quality and commissioning work. How does and where does the IGCC fit in the context of green building standards and the rating systems? We would also learn the jurisdictional and project electives. That really means that we're talking about municipalities, and project electives actually come down to the designer and the builders and the owners as to what they perceive as important options that they want to integrate into their projects. And how, I mean, all codes are actually HSW, which is health, safety, and welfare. IGCC actually brought up this idea of to the health, safety, and welfare, we should add an impact on the environment as to what does our design and buildings do to the environment. So that is a key element of the fourth tier of the building codes now. So what is IGCC? As said before, its scope is really the scope. The IGCC is designed to be adopted. It's written in the language where it can be adopted, can be used and enforced as a national model code. It is written in the code language. The intent of the code is to safeguard the environment, public health, safety, general welfare, and reduce the negative impacts of built environment on the natural environment. The application is conservation of natural resources, materials, water, energy, ensuring indoor air environmental quality. There are actually 13 chapters, and that address different points in the building code. The first 3 chapters, in fact, are relate to the scope and administration definitions and jurisdictional requirements in terms of how you can customize the code. You can really customize the code based on where the project is located, geographical location. The requirements for green construction code, for example, in Florida would be quite a lot different than on the East Coast or on the West Coast. So the code IGCC recognizes that fact, and so it gives the leeway whereby jurisdictions, the adopting jurisdictions, and the building designers, owners, and facility managers they can determine what electives they can choose to add on or subtract from the base or the native IGCC code. Chapter 4, starting from chapter 4 to 10, actually this kind of applies to almost everywhere with electives, obviously. So it starts with site development and the land use. After that is the material resource and conservation. Chapter 4 actually is the crux of the entire building code, which has to do with the energy efficiency and air quality. Chapter 7, water resources. It is becoming more and more important. How do we maintain, how do we conserve and efficiently use the water resources that we have? And actually you can see that just in today's news, as a matter of fact, that about 18% of the land mass in Florida is drought affected. So it is going to become, with time, it is becoming a bigger and a bigger problem. We don't hear about the water issue that much in the Midwest, but you can talk to people in California. You can talk actually outside of the United States, countries like Middle East and Africa and Asia, where water actually scarcity is a major problem. Chapter 8 is indoor environmental quality, and that has more to do with the inside and the interiors of the building. That is the living environment as to how do we design building systems whereby the indoor environmental quality actually enhances our living experience and is more healthier. Chapter 9 is building operation and maintenance, and after we all know, after everything is said and done, building is designed and handed over and occupancy has taken place, this building actually would continue to operate and to be maintained, hopefully for the next 40, 50 years. So how do we keep the original intent of the design, the performance of the design? How do we make sure that that performance is not degraded while the building is operating, so that we actually, and this is done through maintenance. Chapter 10 is mostly about existing buildings and as to how the code could be applied to the existing buildings. Jurisdiction and lifestyle. Again, I've kind of gone through this thing, but I'll say that the IGCC is designed to allow the states and the jurisdictions together or independently actually to develop a framework whereby how they're going to apply these regulations, and that framework could include their set of priorities. For example, it could be maybe in a region where forestry products, wood is a major item, and industry use. So how do we bring wood into the IGCC, forestry stewardships and all that kind of stuff? So it allows jurisdictions to have that leeway whereby they can introduce elements of materials and climate and what have you that are of priority for them to address. So in that sense, it allows jurisdictions to customize the code. The next item is whole building life cycle assessment, and this is where it's really not a mandatory requirement, but it is there depending on, it could serve as an alternative to material selection. Requirements of Section 505, as I said, some jurisdiction may like to, some industries, some regions may like to introduce wood. Some industries may like to introduce some other products into the building industry. So you could say it's a flexible kind of a building code, allows a lot of flexibility so that you can build flexibility and actually tailor the code to your own particular needs. Site, that is pretty much the very first item of consequence here, because every project has a site as to how the natural resources could be preserved, how the stormwater management is addressed, how the landscape irrigation system would be designed, management of vegetation, soils, and erosion control depending on the building site waste management, Transportation impact, not all sites are located close to, transportation hubs. So how are those addressed? Heat island mitigation and site lighting. So this is where we are starting to get into now, from the site design itself and then getting into the building aspects of the code. Material resources, again, what materials we plan to use, the designer plans to use, the builder wants to use, the owner would like to have. So the code addresses chapter 5, where the material resources are actually elaborated in the building code. Some of the items that we have here are, in terms of, there are some minimum established standards. Again, some of these could actually go into the electives. You can choose not to, and you can choose to. So you can go to higher values, for example, which is jurisdictions can select higher values in table 301. The recycling areas for use by building occupants. In terms of materials, what percentage of material that are going to be used comes from recyclable content, come from bio-based, and are they indigenous, are they local, for example, as opposed to using materials that have to be shipped from from a distance. So all these things have that impact on the environment. Obviously, a building material that is just a few miles away has a lesser impact on the environment than the building material that is coming maybe through a container ship or something like that. So there are these, you could say, thresholds established that could vary up and down, but I think they have kind of given us a basic indication of how and what materials are desirable to be used. Same thing goes for limitations of fluorescent lamps, because now we are trying to get away from mercury limits for fluorescent lamps. These all end up actually in waste dump sites and what have you. So with LEDs, for example. Same thing goes for, in fact, for incandescent. I understand that somewhere along the future, the incandescent lamps actually would be replaced because of the energy that they waste. Moisture control. So these are all part of the chapter 5. Chapter 6 actually is the crux of the International Green Building Code and deals with energy and air quality. This chapter is applicable to new buildings. It is applicable to additions to existing buildings, and has very detailed energy requirements. Energy requirements for alterations to existing buildings are, in fact, have been moved into chapter 10, which is existing chapter for existing buildings. So IGCC actually does provide following 2 energy compliance paths. One is prescriptive base. It's more in terms of, and this prescriptive base comes from having developed ongoing relations with ASHRAE, for example, and using those standards which actually have been used in the industry, design and building industry, for a long time, and those standards have been referenced into the IGCC. So that is where the prescriptive based compliance path comes in. The other is performance based. You could call that, depends on the, it's based on the Zero Energy Performance Index. So based on that, you have 2 compliance paths you can follow, either or, as far as complying with the energy and air quality. Chapter 7 deals with water efficiency, conservation, and it finds its use in, for example, plumbing fixtures. Dual flush, for example. That's how the dual flush from WaterSense came about. This is the US EPA, and that's how they started working on these things, and how plumbing fixtures could be designed, plumbing fixtures fittings could be designed to be more effective and efficient. Applies to these energy provisions apply to appliances, car washes, cooling towers. In other words, every building system that actually uses water. Same thing goes for HVAC systems and equipment, water treatment systems, how the water is metered. This is a very interesting item because we have some stats from California where about close to 30% of the water that is supplied to residential developments is not metered at all. And this is coming from a state that actually is suffering from drought. So I think metering is what tells you actually how much water are you really consuming, and that becomes the base point, is the basis of your design. What is it you can do that your consumption level goes down? Rainwater collection systems, again, this is again from if why, how could the rainwater could be collected and used in terms of gray water and what have you for landscaping and other uses. Reclaimed water system, and there are other alternative water sources. So chapter 7 actually basically deals with water efficiency, resources, and conservation. Indoor environmental quality or indoor air quality management plan required. So the IGCC actually requires, as part of a compliance path for the facility managers to come up with how the indoor air quality, not just the design part of itself, but the management plan, how would that be maintained through the maintenance of the systems. It elaborates further on to HVAC and air handling systems. Emphasis obviously is placed on accessing those air handling systems for maintenance, controls, testing, certification, durability, cleanability, filters, and ventilation requirements. The same chapter 8 actually addresses indoor air quality management during the construction phase requirements, pollutant controls, material emission limits, acoustics, and daylighting. So this is really has to do with the occupant comfort level, occupant health and comfort. This chapter is about that. And commissioning, this is this is a major chapter in terms, because when we talk about designing a building based on IGCC, based on the prescriptive or performance based calculations are done, building systems are designed, and then they are installed. Those systems are only as good until they work with time. If those systems are not maintained, then there is a natural degradation of the systems, and that's where this commissioning comes in. And this commissioning actually becomes really an ongoing process, whereby yearly inspections, certifications, and what have you, and this becomes part of the IGCC, whereby the building inspectors are under this program are obligated to actually inspect these buildings on a yearly basis. And so we are talking about operations and maintenance, and there are normally logs, and these logs actually are being developed by the IGCC to help the building enforcement and inspection departments to maintain a record of the building maintenance. These are maintained by the facility managers. These are maintained by the building owners, and the inspector actually is there to make sure that the maintenance standards are being followed through, so that the commissioning or the you could say the operations of the building are actually working as they were designed, at the time of the design and when the building was handed over for occupancy. So that's where these building maintenance schedules come in. And it addresses issues that are not just about the energy itself, but a whole lot more of the maintenance of the equipment, for example. This goes into commissioning in terms of, if you go into Title 901, 903.1, there are list of items for which commissioning is required or encouraged. There are actually items that ICC has been working on, that they have developed, or the IGCC has developed, which actually need constant commissioning and actually maintenance. So there is a difference between pre-occupancy and post-occupancy, and as much as both of these are important, the post-occupancy is much more important because this tends to continue for the life of the building. Existing buildings. The existing buildings, actually, we're talking about IGCC does apply to alterations and renovations. IGCC is based on, it's loosely based on International Building Code, Chapter 34. Depending on the renovations, alterations, whichever portion of the building is actually undergoing modifications, those modifications must, if the code is adopted, if the IGCC is adopted by the jurisdiction, then that portion of the building must meet the current IGCC requirement in terms of the chapters that we have gone through, in terms of energy and water and indoor air quality and what have you. Not, I was saying, yes, that whatever changes that you do to a certain portion of the building, or the portion of the building that are being renovated, the IGCC applies once. It kind of comes into play when a cost is developed to see if we are going to apply modifications to this portion of the building. Would those modifications be 10% of the total cost of alterations or alterations? If they are more than that, then that's where the IGCC comes into play. If they are less than that, then IGCC it does not need to apply in those situations. The additions, whenever there are additions to existing buildings, they are very much treated much like a new construction, and hence the applicable IGCC code or the requirements of the IGCC code will apply as if they were being applied to a new building. The historic buildings are exempted from many of the provisions of the code. Obviously, this would depend upon what the scope of the addition to the renovations or modifications to the historic building is about, depending on that, so that I think the idea here is to somehow make sure that the original character of the historic building is not altered by imposing compliance to the IGCC requirements. And that's one of the areas where the jurisdictions, and I think to some extent also the architects and the builders, along with the owners, can apply an elective path to see to what extent it would make sense for them to comply with the IGCC requirements. So that's a flexibility actually built into the IGCC code. The project electives are, these are, obviously these electives are either jurisdictional or project electives, based on what the designer and the owners and the builders decide. And they need to be, at least for the jurisdiction itself, they can only be enforced if they have been adopted. They cannot be enforced if there has no jurisdiction provision made and they have been legislatively adopted. So the jurisdictions in this case, they set the minimum number of, they set the electives that must be complied with on all projects constructed in that jurisdiction. The other electives that I just mentioned to you is really the owner or the owner's rep. In this case, could be an architect or the builder. They choose the specific project electives to be implemented on these projects, and this could be based on a whole lot of parameters. A whole set of parameters could be material use, for example. It could be maybe they want to go above and beyond in terms of energy efficiency. Maybe they want to, maybe water might be an issue, so they want to relax those requirements for themselves. So it really comes down to what is it that the owner's reps and the owner determine would be appropriate for their project. IGCC actually, as I said earlier, was started sometime, the process of developing the IGCC was started in 2009. There have been many public meetings, code action hearings and code action committee meetings and what have you. And in these meetings, the meetings have had representations from USGBC. They have had representation from American Institute of Architects, ASHRAE, and other bodies. So currently, the code IGCC has been issued for release in 2012.
Hey, Ramesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, just looking at this, are these all of the states that have adopted them, or are these the states with municipalities that have adopted?
No, the six states that you see on the left-hand side, 5 states that you see, these states have adopted the codes. Sorry. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 municipalities have adopted. So as I was saying, the IGCC adoption does not really mean that if the state has to adopt the code, the municipalities do have a leeway in terms of they want to adopt the code or they don't want to adopt the code. The adoption by the code doesn't necessarily mean the jurisdictions, individual jurisdictions can adopt the code or they want to adopt the code. They may very well opt out. Case could be that, for example, Illinois might be considering adoption, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Chicago would adopt it. You follow?
Yes, thank you.
There is actually, I mean, there are quite a few municipalities and states that are considering adoption, and the codes are under review. And that's a pretty extensive list because these are the first who were very, very interested. They were most impacted by the sustainability aspect, the carbon emissions and what have you. So they have gone ahead and adopted the codes. Just to bring this back a bit and summarize, and there is much confusion amongst designers, builders, and owners as to what is what. So here is a summary slide of sustainability. There are codes, IECC, which is energy conservation. IGCC is green construction. These are actually the two building codes. Once adopted, they become the law of the land. Then you have the green standards. The green standards are ASHRAE 90.1, which is applicable to all buildings except low-rise residential, about 3 stories high. And ASHRAE 189.1, that again is a standard for the design of high-performance green buildings. The D, or ASHRAE 189.1, does not really apply. Actually, both ASHRAE 90.1 and 189.1 do not apply to single, two, or multi-family residential buildings which are 3 stories or less above grade. Then after the green codes and the green standards, there are other systems which are kind of voluntary, or the rating systems, certification systems. They are, however, not codes, and LEED is a prime example of that. It's very, very well known because of its association with industry, and they are actually in the forefront of setting different, issues, bringing different issues to the forefront, and which both ASHRAE and ICC have followed up. So in that sense, LEED is the leader. And then you have the Green Globes, which is by the Green Building Initiative, rating systems, NAHB, which is the National Association of Home Builders Green Building Guidelines. They have their own systems as well. It really comes down to, I think, with the current, very recent release by IGCC in the month of August, I think probably about 7 days ago, that ASHRAE 189.1 would be gradually merged under ICC when the IGCC 2018 code is released. Is actually, you could call that a memorandum of understanding that have been set, because in essence both IGCC and LEED reference ASHRAE 189.1 in their codes and rating systems. So the idea is to bring consistency in and finding references in one spot, as opposed to having 2 or 3 different bodies addressing the same issue. So that's where ASHRAE as a building standard will disappear in 2018 and would be merged under IGCC. Going to the options for commercial buildings, on the right-hand side of the slide, what you can see is IECC and ASHRAE 90.1 are related to energy, and interestingly, there has been close collaboration between IECC and ASHRAE. So you can see that this has been going on for some time, and ICC allows compliance with ASHRAE 90.1 as an alternative path to compliance. So IECC will allow, in terms of energy and water efficiency and what have you, as a compliance path, if the designer and the builder and the owners choose to use 90.1 as an option. The green really is IGCC and ASHRAE 189.1. The 90.1 was the energy. The green code is really 189.1. And this year again, IGCC allows an alternative compliance path to itself, as long as the designer, the builder, and the owner complies with ASHRAE 189.1 as an option. And one reason why this is so is because there is an IGCC and IECC overlap on energy. So in many ways, ASHRAE and IGCC and IECC on the energy part at least Chapter 6, they are addressing the same issues, and they have the same prescriptive requirements and this, and performance requirements. The options for, and this is a question that many designers and builders and the owners ask, well, what is it that I'm supposed to follow? In the energy part, it is the IECC that applies to low-rise residential, and that is 3 stories or less. When you're talking about green, we're talking about the International Code Council. This is the 700 series, and it is in other words, it is called the National Guidelines, National Green Building Standards. That is actually has been now worked between ICC and NAHB. They are developing these standards together. So this is what applies when we're talking about a project that could be categorized as low-rise residential. That's pretty much the presentation. And if anyone wants to have any questions, please, you can field the calls, Brett.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, please put them right into the chat, and or I can at this point unmute you too if you want me to, and you can ask us directly. And while we're waiting for someone to come in, I did want to bring up this announcement here. This announcement's been fairly made by several different folks. Right here is just the interesting one, and I can share it with a link from buildinggreen.com. Just the collaboration between these large entities to support the ASHRAE 189.1 standard, which, as Ramesh pointed out, will eventually be IGCC for the commercial industry anyway, for a commercial green code. So these organizations such as AIA, the Illuminating Engineering Society, USGBC, and IGCC and ASHRAE have come together to, put this code out there and make it accessible and put together education and resources and training for basically for municipalities or states who want to adopt the ASHRAE standard, and then ASHRAE 189.1 standard, and ideally the IGCC standard. So it's exciting to see this collaborative effort across these entities, and that's one thing I can share with you all too. Is it's pretty neat. So I don't see any questions quite yet. So I did want to Ramesh bring one other thing up. It seems like if somebody wanted to follow IGCC now, kind of be a little bit proactive in their design or their construction, and they're not necessarily in a state that requires it, what would be the best pathway for them to do it? Would it be to go to IGCC's website? Would it be to utilize the National Green Building Standard, which has sort of a checklist and a program that's already follows IGCC? What would you recommend?
Well, for starters, depending on if you're talking about commercial projects or you're talking about residential projects.
Yeah, let me back up. So IGCC, I'm talking about single family or 1 to 3 story multifamily housing projects.
What you do is, again, two options that happen. One is the energy, and the other is the green. So when we talk about low-rise residential, which is 3 stories or less, actually, so we're talking about complying with IECC for the energy portion, and for the green portion, we're talking about complying with ICC 700, which is the NGBS. So that's for the residential portion. And if you're talking about commercial buildings, for the energy, it is the IECC. You can, at present time, you can use IECC 2012. I think 2015 has been issued, but it's probably not adopted yet. So you can use IECC or ASHRAE 90.1. Those are the energy standards being used. When we talk about green, and if that's the determination made by the owners and the designers, then you can go with IGCC and ASHRAE 189.1. So which, as I said, as you said too, that come 2018, actually there would be only one. It would be just IGCC 2015. So there are two components to whenever you're designing a building. One is the green part, and the other is the energy part. So you can go with, for residential, you can go with IECC and ICC. It's not to say that NGBS or ICC 700 applies only to low rise. It also applies to high rise as well. But for low rise, particularly, these are the two codes, the ICC 700 and IECC. Does that answer your question, Brett?
Yeah, it answers my question, and then we had another question come in from, I believe, Ida or Etta here, and I wanted to ask, it kind of goes along with it, but were you asking about single family or multifamily there when you were asking? So the question is there a way, so single family, and this would apply for multifamily too. So the question is there a way for a building to be certified as having fouled IGCC code? And my understanding is the only way a building would be certified is if the actual code officials are implementing it within the jurisdiction. Otherwise, if somebody wanted to have it, for example, third-party rated, Ramesh, what would be their pathway to do that now?
Well, the IGCC, for example, 2012 and 15, the 2012 is relatively new. 2015 is coming in spring of 2015. So there is a whole new process involved here. Once they get adopted, there is a infrastructure that needs to be prepared for this thing by the municipalities, whereby, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Whereby these inspectors actually are trained, so they have a training program, certification program, so that when they're looking at plans or when they're talking to the building owners or the designers, that they're informed about the compliance paths to this thing. And IGCC has been developing these. The municipalities, obviously, and the states that have adopted these, they have these forms. So it really comes down to when you go for a permit, at that time you fill in these forms, and you have charts and the entire set of regulatory form that need to be filled in as to which compliance path you're gonna take, for example, and that then moves through the process of permitting and follow through later on. So that's a way to do it. I can only say this, that if somebody wanted to say that, oh geez, my municipality has not yet adopted this building code, so should I do that? It's a valid question, and I think the issue comes down to you're building this facility for that is going to remain there for next 20 or 30 years, maybe even longer. The building codes are what actually, if they're not applicable today, they would be applicable a year from now or 2 years from now. And why not follow those codes? Because you would be, by the time your facility is built, those codes are very likely in existence.
Okay, Ramesh, we're hitting at 1 o'clock here, and the other comment that came in is this: so there's no way to certify to IGCC, and that's essentially absolutely correct. Again, it's either a code pass fail in your municipality or it's not. So what the national
process? That's an easy process.
Yep. So what the National Green Building Standard here is, if everyone can see my screen that I threw up, I downloaded their checklist here from the Home Innovations Research Lab. Right. And what the National Green Building Standard has done through the Home Builders, so it's called Home Innovations Lab through the Home Builders Association. what they have done is they put together a green building program basically hitched to IGCC or ICC 700, with all of its protocols, but then it's also a point-based rating system. If you can score their basic level and work with one of their third-party green verifiers in your region, you could, technically, in a sense, get your project certified under IGCC.
And be compliant.
Yeah, and be compliant, and be prepared for when the codes do change. So it's not, directly answering your question. It's not IGC certification, but it is the ICC 700 through
That's
the
right.
National Green Building Standard. And
Right.
so, yeah, you just go to their website, Home Innovations Lab, look for a local green verifier, and those kind of folks can help you in your region. This program is expanding rapidly. I believe if you go to their website, you'll see they've already certified 40,000 single-family and low-rise multifamily residents. So that is something you can take advantage of now.
Yep. And as we speak, as a matter of fact, NGBS task groups are working on the 2015 code upgrades. So that's coming in the future. Right now, ICC 700, which is NGBS, the 2012 is being used, and you can only use it depending on which jurisdiction has adopted that. But you could, I think that you would not be wrong to use it, even if it hasn't, because eventually you would be compliant.
Yep.
I mean, what happens is that whether you use NGBS or what have you, these codes actually do take into account the green globes and lead the design parameters that they have been actually advocating through their versions, through their standards.
Yeah. Well, great here. We're about 4 minutes over, and I didn't see any other questions come in, so I'm just going to wrap up here, really quick. I want to thank you all again for attending the Understanding the International Green Construction Code and How to Use It Now, being presented by one of our board members and Sustainability Council members, Ramesh Gulati. My name is Brett Little, and I'm the Executive Director here at the GreenHome Institute, formerly the Alliance for Environmental Sustainability. For all those of you listened in, and we're going to be sending out a PDF of the PowerPoint, some other resource links and contact information, and then a 10-question quiz that you need to complete at an 80% pass rate to get your continuing education. If you don't pass the quiz, don't worry, I'll work with you on the answers. So that will all be coming out, and we'll also be kicking over a recording of this webinar that you can access now or later. So thanks again for everybody for attending our first of our fall series session. We've got some great sessions coming up tonight, next week, the week after that, and hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everybody.